The most common problems on the most common lawnmower, probably one of the most common lawnmowers out there today, big box store lawnmowers. They come in a few different brands. This is a Craftsman. Basically, they're all made by MTD. But we're going to go over this one. Won't start, won't run. I'm going to show you the most common problem, but I'm also going to go over the other very common problems I find with these and why they have a very limited life. They just don't last. They're not going to last. However, if you look out for what I'm going to show you and maybe you do a little bit more maintenance on it, fix the initial problem. Once we get it running again, we'll go over everything else. And you might be able to get some good use out of this type of a machine for a good long time. Eventually, you're going to have to get another machine. Let's get started. Now, before we get a better look at it, I just want to mention a few things. Now, it's been sitting. I can see evidence of that. It doesn't run. Like I said, it doesn't look all that bad. The handle, which has been above ground, is not all rusted. And at first blush, you might think it's a potentially good machine. So if you were looking to buy one at a garage sale or something, I'll show you what else to look out for. Now, I need to clean it, and you'll see why in a minute. But also, I'll go over why as well, that we're going to fix the carburetor on. I'm going to pull the carburetor off. We want to get the carburetor off, but we want to get the dirt out of the way. Because when we clean the carburetor, we have a nice clean carburetor. Any little bit of dirt that's hanging around somewhere, right, is going to find its way back into our work and possibly getting the carburetor or getting the motor, and you don't want that. We're going to make the carburetor really clean, and we're going to get it running really good. And this motor, even if this body doesn't work out for us, this motor will probably come back. It's a 450. It's not one of their bigger ones, but it's not terrible for a platform like this, 21-inch cut. It's a push, it's a molt, and you have a bag option. I'm going to show you when we get outside. I'm going to set up out there, and we're going to take these tops off. And there's just 3 bolts. They're shoulder bolts to take this top off. The tank kind of pulls on a bayonet mount, pulls and slides off out of the way. And then there's 2 different types of screws that hold the carburetor in. So we'll go over that in a minute. But let's go outside. I'm going to go set up, and I want to show you the underneath, all right? And you'll probably be a little bit alarmed, and I think this is a good example of what I'm talking about. Let's get to it. Let's get in close. There is a frightening amount of spalling, just pieces of the deck. This is what happens when you leave it sit on the ground too long, or now this one doesn't have a lot of grass on it, but if a lot of grass gets on it, gets stuck and it's wet, like you cut your lawn after the sprinkler or you don't let it dry all the way, it will destroy these thin decks. And it's underneath the plastic, all up in this area here underneath, and it's just coming apart. So they need to be kept clean. There'll probably be a hole here or something. I'm going to use the electric pressure washer. We'll pop the blade off first. But yeah, I have one I'll show you where another thing to look out for too is they crack over here, and I have a shot from another video I did. Give you a couple of shots on that to where they crack. And then they'll actually crack and they'll twist. And then you're done. So I'm going to pull that blade off, and I'll show you pulling the tops off too. Now you will have to remove any fuel from the tank. You could try dumping it. You can use a turkey baster. And what I did was I used my suction tool that I have and I made up. And I can see mostly that's water in there. And so water's in this tank. I don't see any dirt, but we're still going to clean it out. But that's a little bit of gas with a whole lot of bit of water. And you might see it. And you see a little bit of rust forming here, but I see it here as I touch it with my fingernail. It's bubbly paint, and as it's wicking up from underneath and working its way across the top, and that'll just peel right off. So we're going to be careful with hitting that with the pressure washer. Here are the bolts, right? Just the 3. I click these off here, and then this will slide right up. Okay, and I'm going to need both hands, but let me show you that. You see all the dirt in here too. Now, if this is a push prime, but if you have an automatic choke, there'll be a spring mechanism in here, and you want to be real careful. If you're pressure washing with a hose, it won't matter, but with a pressure washer, if you hit it too hard in here, you'll pop that spring, and you can see all the dirt. So if you were to just take the carburetor off, most of this dirt would be in your way. It would fall in to what you're doing. It's a good time to clean, get your machine cleaned up. It should be worth it, right? Otherwise you wouldn't be doing this at all. So give it a good wash. All right, here's what's in here. It's not terrible, right? But this would cause some issues with it running. So if yours starting to get like that, give it a good clean. You can wash it out with some detergent, Dawn soap. You can use gas, but I don't recommend it, right? These tend to blow up. Even Kera or whatever, they just kind of like swell up. So super clean or Dawn detergent, wring it out, blot it out with a towel or rag or something, leave it sit out in the sun. And if you do it now, by the time you're done with everything else, that'll be all nice and dry. All right, just grab it. Kind of like, see how I'm like kind of putting my thumbs up here. Just a little easier way to pry up. That's it. Now we're gonna leave it like that because we're gonna clean it out, and I really don't want to get water in there yet. We'll disconnect it later, but just leave it here for now. And as we pressure wash, right, I can get around everything. All right, I think we're ready to pressure wash. There's really, like I said, I'm not worried about water going in at this point. There's no crazy spring that I'm too worried about. We have a spring down here. Probably can't see it yet, but I'm not using the high pressure washer, and you can just use a bit of super clean or detergent in your hose. All right, let me get it clean. All right, we'll see you guys in a minute. All right, also, wait, hold on. Don't leave, okay? Don't forget, fellas. All right, this gets real jammed up, this guy. So we're gonna want to clean that out too, and I'll show you later on. We'll add a little lubricant to it because they get sticky and nasty. You're just pulling it off the table. Need a rust. It's on the table. Traveling down my ramp. And so let's look over here. You can see it all in there, right? It's all over the top. Most of it just rinsed down into the grass, which is fine. It's just rust, but it's not just rust. Instead of it being grass, which is what you would normally be kicking off, well, it's your mower deck. All right, scoured it. You can see there's still some spalling left. All right, blade's clean and on. And I did a little balancing on it. It's not in great shape, but this mower is not going to sell for much. All right, it just isn't worth it. But we don't see any cracks here or here, so that's good. It got thin, and there's still a little bit left. Now, if I used my electric pressure washer, so if I used one of my gas powered, especially the high pressure one with the cat pump on it, 3,000 psi, it would have really just ripped at it. I don't see any holes, and we don't have a lot of light up here, but yeah, it's not terrible, right? We may have saved this machine from a fate worse than death. Let's take a look at the top. See what I mean? Now, if I kept at it, it would have blown off a lot of this paint up top here. Some of it's just laying on here. That's what I mean. And so it's happening, and there's even more bubbling over here. So by that hole, there's no primer on these, right? This is like a powder coat. That's one of the problems with powder coat. There's no primer, and depending upon how it's applied. So it doesn't look terrible. I just took the plug out, and I blew out the water that was in there, and some of that came from us, but a lot of that came from the fact that water is in the tank. Let's take the carb off now. Now I want to show you here why I say it really is probably one of the worst machines on the planet. Let's take a look at this little bit of footage here. So I have one image here where it's actually been tweaked and twisted. And I'll dig up the other one on where the cracks are and what have you. So this is something that you want to look for. I just wanted to show you. See, these are the ones that crack. There and there. And that'll fold up like a pretzel. And I think I actually have a pic of one that did that. They don't last at all. But this is really the primary reason. It's a very inexpensive machine. Well, now they've gone up in price. Nothing's inexpensive today. So this is what we're at, right? You can buy better machines, and MTD does make better machines, but this being one of the most common ones out there, but it's also one of the worst ones on the planet. And certainly here in the United States, but they're sold all over the place. And as I said, they're mostly big box store, mowers. Now, there is something they do like about that, about this engine and about this kind of setup. It is very light. It is easy to deal with. The handle stores very easily. You can put it out of the way. And the motors are pretty decent if you take care of them. And the carburetors are resistant to alcohol. The issues with alcohol and the fuel, but they're not resistant to dirt. So let's get in there, take the carburetor off, and we're going to want to clean the tank out. This is an extra step if you know your fuel is good. And you absolutely know your fuel is good, then you don't have to do that. But the question remains is if your fuel is good and has always been good, then you won't have this problem. So because it won't run and the carburetor is cooled up, you got junk in your tank. And if you just clean the carburetor out, then it's either in your can and it started off in your can and you're dumping it into the gas tank on the, in the lawnmower, or it blew in or whatever, and however it happened. But this is what happens. Water and dirt gets in and it's in the tank and it's got to be cleaned out. Let's get to work. All right, so there are two different types of screws or bolts here. So the outer one, I think it's more like a 5/16, so it's probably metric, but I usually just grab this guy, which I don't even know what size it is. 8mm will also work on it, but you need socket sets. You need some drivers. And this one, I happen to be using 9/32, and that's the inner one. So the inner one goes into the plastic, right, of the carburetor, and the outer one, or the larger head, right, is going into the metal bracket. So let's just take those off. Okay, so as I mentioned, I pulled the plug out. I have the bail tied back up on the handle. That way I can spin everything around and check spark and compression. I still want to know all that, but that's not for this video. Screws are out. This is hanging. We'll take that off in a minute. And now we're just going to pull backwards, right? We'll clean this a little bit more. There's still junk falling down. We're just going to pull it back until it comes off. And then we have this rod here, and it's on one of these Z-bends, so you just give it a turn and pull it off and just put that out of the way. And next step is, let's go bring this on the bench and get it apart, and we're going to clean the tank, and then we'll get to the carburetor. There's a lot of dirt in there. So let's see what ooh, yum. Egg sack or something. Ugh, get rid of that. I'm going to take a little bit of my tranny fluid mix, because it's like release agent. I'm going to get this off, and I'm going to put a little super clean in it. You can use any good detergent, just a little bit of water, shake it up. I'm going to put a little cap over this too. Rinse it out with the hose, all of that. And it doesn't look terrible in there, but here's the thing, right? You want to have another problem with it? And then I'm going to blow it out. Oh, yep. And another thing I see too. That's how cheap these things are. I don't know if you can, you'll see. It'll come out. Yep. Oh, well, there's the screen. So now there's no screen in there. And this is the kind of crap, right, that you find. I don't know if I have another one handy, but all the more reason why we can't have any dirt in it or whatever, because there's no screen and there's no way to put it back. And there's not enough room to put any kind of filter in, right? So you're screwed there. Happens. All right, let me blow this out at least. All right, tank is clean. So now let's just take off the rest of it. Now, before I do, though, what I want to show you is we're going to clean this in some solvent, and we're going to kind of rinse the outside of the carburetor, because I don't want any more of this like going into the carburetor, right? The idea is to make things cleaner as we go. You don't need any fancy tools to do it. That's just a bit of solvent. And I'm just going to get in here, brush off, and then I'll give it a quick blow. Make sure it's empty of fuel. Make sure that everything here, we got a lot of it. It did a good job. That little pressure washer, that little electric. It is good for some of the more smaller, more sensitive areas around engines, because it's got more power than a hose, but not so much power like I have with the other pressure washers. And what I like to do is I like to cut the ends of these brushes, and it makes them a little bit stiffer. All right, so what I'm going to do, this is getting cleaner. Just going to rag it and blow it off. And then we'll take it apart. And I'm going to wash this guy. I'm just going to hit this with a bit of solvent, and then I'm going to rinse it in my parts washer real quick. Just want to get all of the junk out of the way. And then a quick water rinse. And we'll be right back. All right, now that all of our peripherals are clean, gas tank, primer bulb. By the way, this is a better primer bulb design than the flathead Briggs. That's one of the Achilles heels of the good old flathead Briggs setup, unfortunately. So now we're going to take the smaller socket, and these are different, these screws here. So I'll put them aside. And don't use power tools for any of this stuff, fellas. Especially on the carb here, because this will strip out, and then that'll be the end of that. There is a way to fix it, but, you know, that's just more work. Got some junk up on that. Stuff gets stuck. Still stuck. Probably more of that spidery yuck. And here we go. Now, take a screwdriver and be careful where you pry. So where I'm prying is up in here, right? And where this sort of tab is. I think you can see that. I just want to make sure you can. I want to, because it's black, let me up the gain a little on the camera. All right, so right here, just a bit, and then I can reach in there. Same here. And it comes right out. All right, just a bit of water in there. Doesn't look terrible. I'm going to clean around this gasket, this O-ring, a little bit. Yeah, that looks good. And I'll show you a spot where I find a lot of dirt. All right, let me dump this fluid out of here because I'm standing over it, and there's no point. We don't need this junk anymore. It's not looking too bad. All right, let's pull this float out. And this might look like it snaps in, but it doesn't. All right, you'll damage it, and you won't get it in. So let's just pull the pin. Comes right out. Okay. That's all nice. So these have, this one in particular has a nice rubber seat on it. It's a silicone rubber seat. Could be Viton or something, but it's made for alcohol. Now, let's pull this, and we're gonna, very simple to do. We'll grab our pliers, put it down, and just grab it like this. Don't grab it here because there's an orifice here, a brass orifice. Grab it like this. All right, so if you want, just put it down. A little bit more stability, and just give it a yank and she'll come. See? Now you can see it only goes in one direction. All right. There's an O-ring here, and I can see there's junk in the bottom there. Now I have seen people stick a screwdriver in, and that's bad. That's not a good idea. I don't know why they would do that. But you stick it in here, what'll happen is two things. One, you're likely to nick that O-ring, right? That seal, that gasket. You're likely to nick it, and then of course it'll break, or it won't, you don't have no seal, or it'll cause a nick and it won't seal. And the other thing you're likely to do is distort this whole plastic cavity here. It's just plastic. And the third thing is you might put a scratch in it, in which case it won't seal properly. And then you'll be wondering why you went through all of this and it doesn't work. So I don't know why anybody would have ever done that, but I have seen that out there, and I've seen some, pretty decent mechanics, but people make mistakes, right? And they don't realize it. I remember working years ago, and I would see that somebody would, like my age now, doing something wrong, and I'd say to them, but I don't think that's right. And they'd say, what the hell do you know, kid? I've been doing it this way for 30 years. And occasionally I'd quip, yeah, and you've been doing it wrong for 30 years. All right, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take that brush in a second, but we're just going to flavor it. There's a nice brass seat down in there. And I'm going to take my little brush, just kind of go around and loosen up anything that might be an issue. And then, of course, down in here as well. I'm going to kind of twist it up, especially in this area here where this little O-ring goes. So we'll put that to the side. We don't want to get that dirtier. And that's it. That's all it's required here. There's a little bit of junk came out. Nothing major. Right, and there's some junk still in here. Now, there is an O-ring here. And I'm going to very carefully just kind of pop it, as I know where it is. That's its lock. Sorry for this. This is going to be glaring you a little bit, but this is a black machine. And just to make sure there's no dirt in here, I'm going to take a little bit of my tranny fluid mix and just sweeten that O-ring up, put it to the side. So we want to make sure there's no dirt in this area so we get a good seal to the manifold. And then all we need to do here is just spray in these holes. And then when we go to blow, this is a vent, this white thing. And then we got a couple over here. I'll show you. All right, I'll be right there. Let me just blow this. About 20 pounds of air, no more. Okay. Now on this model, you have this booster venturi. So we want to clean it because it's still got some dirt there. You'll see. I'll show you how to put it back in. Well, it should take you about 15-20 minutes. And then in here, we're going to spray a little bit, and I'm going to run my brush into this area here. Right, that's kind of like underneath that booster where it accumulates. And then another quick blow and rinse. Yeah, she's better now. It's clean. Oh yeah, I could see in there. It's clean. Sometimes there's a lot of debris in these things. All right, put that to the side. Now, this fella here, make sure your O-ring is clean. Now, what I see is a lot of dirt lays in here, and it gets underneath this casting thing. It's a nut. Don't take it out. Don't bother. But junk gets caught underneath it. So a little bit of gum out. You see, I don't use a lot. Right? I don't flood it. It's kind of a waste. That's what that solvent is for. And that's all I need to do. Just wipe it out, and I'll give it a blow. It's very common because this is like a trap in here. So you'll see water and junk. Let's put that to the side. Now we can turn our attention to this. Now you can get these, but there's rarely a problem. I use either like a welding tip cleaner, or you can get these on Amazon. And I just kind of go in and poke around a little bit. If you see a lot of dirt in there, you've got something wrong. I mean, it really shouldn't be. Right, and this is, you can actually tune your engine through these. This is the main jet up here. But they generally clean out. All right, let's give it a blow. There's a little dirt in it. I see it coming out. There's dirt. You may not see it, but I can see it. Right? It's because of the glare. If I tilt this, it might be easier on you. It's just glaring back. This is a very fine, this is from a Tecumseh, and it's got a little keeper on it. And a lot of times this will get in here. Yeah, it goes right in. So you can use like maybe like an 8 or a 10 thousandths guitar string. Let's clean it some more. Make sure it's free. Oh, I just shot out a piece of junk. Yeah, there was a piece of junk in there. See? That little piece of junk came out, so it sucked up something, probably a bug or something. Let me give it a blow, low pressure air. There we go. It's coming out clean. Sometimes they get a lot of junk in them. And it's very hard to get out. So if yours is if you're struggling with yours, you know, I'll leave a link. Yeah, I think we got a lot out. There was a lot of junk in there. All right, we did good. Yeah, a lot of crap came out. I think we're good. I think we're good to go. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes you can see it. It'll sit right by the jets. All right, let me dump this. Let's assemble it. Okay, so now what we want to do now is lube all this up. All right, I've got all this. Make sure it's all nice and lubed. And we want to orientate this guy. This guy going first. I would recommend taking it out because, it, like I said, dirt will lurk underneath. That hole is for that. That's how she's going to wind up. Except it's got to be in here. All right, so with everything cleaned out, we're going to put this in. There's a little tang there. Yeah, that's going to help you to guide it. And drop it in. It'll kind of reference itself. You can see it there. I can see it. You may not be able to see it, but I can see the hole there. This only goes in one direction. So notice the direction I'm holding it. Let it focus. Let it align. And we want to make sure we just, it'll only go one way. And it'll kind of, it might snap, but with all this lubricant I have on it, it just went right together. All right, so she's in there now. Throttle's working good. I'm going to hang the needle on the float. Drop it down, line it up. Let it nestle in. Done. So lube all this up. This only goes in one direction. So because of the top of the jet there, this is the area that it goes into, in here. Not where that nut is. Right, so it'll only go one direction. Line it up. And with all this lubricant on there, it'll just press right down. No force. Don't drive it in with the screws. That's how people strip them. No power tools here. Put these little screw bolt things in plastic thread. Now, if you tweaked it, you could use a bread tie or a plastic tie, you know, like a tie wrap. Shove it into the area where the threads are borked, right? Kind of pull it out of your way. There's a little bit of room. You might have to cut it flush. You'll have to experiment a little bit. A couple of bread ties, like a bread tie, maybe fold it over or once. Try one at a time. Like, you don't want to crack this plastic housing. All right, so we're good here. So now we're going to put the O-ring in. And then this doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter which way it goes. It tends to go. It's pretty much the same on both sides. So I wouldn't sweat it. All right, it's a lock. It just helps keep it nice and tight. All right, you can see we're done. Everything's all lubed. You want to put a little lube on that shaft, that's fine. You can put a little lube here, right, to make it easier to slide onto the gas tank. And that's it, all right? That's how quick it is. So if you feel you need to replace that jet assembly, like I said, I'll leave a link. But it's not a bad idea, right? I have extras, so if I have a problem with one, I mean, I do it indirectly because I collect this stuff, right? I have a lot of them. I bork up a lot of motors. They come off of chassis that are rotted out. I have extras, and so I don't buy them, but not a bad idea to pick one up. It's cheap insurance or insurance. All right, let's put it on. Here's a quick peek of the plug. I just blew it off, but it had water on it. But it's not terrible, right? When it was running okay, and that's a good sign. I'm going to clean this one up. Now, if you want, pick up a plug, RC12YC. Super common. I just cleaned it up. I gapped it to, it was already gapped, about 28, which is fine. Sorry, I know shiny objects, right? It's hard with cameras. They're not like our eyes. And then a little bit of no seas on it, and we'll put it in a minute. Now, because this engine's an unknown to me, I want to make sure we're okay. So I got, I'm going to use my drill, but you have to leave the top on and pull it. So I'm going to check for spark, but because there was some water in it, I'm going to squirt some of my specialty sauce in there, and I'm going to thread the plug in. And the reason for that is it'll add a bit of back pressure. I'm just going to go in a few threads. And that back pressure is going to push that special sauce, my transmission fluid mix, all right, all through. It'll push it into the muffler and out, you know, through the valve system. Just real quick. That's all. All right, it doesn't feel like it has a lot yet. See, it burped. It's burping here. It's peeing out over here. So, yep, it's coming out. And now, I'll have to blow the plug real quick. Yeah, there's a lot of cook. And you'll see. We'll blow the plug. It's a lot coming out, so I'm just going to stick my tissue there and go slow and try to burp it. There we go. Oh. It pushed it out. All right, we need to get it all out, but yeah, she's still dripping and leaking and burp all that junk out of there. Now we can put, well, that'll loosen up the rings and drive any water out and freshen up the cylinder a little bit, right? That's the idea of it. And to get it out of the way, let's just spin it. Let's see if it's any good. Okay, I got about 75 pounds. Which is not bad for these engines. That's nice after spinning it for a little bit. But also, we have a little oil in there. Transmission fluid is an oil, but it's mixed with gas, so it's kind of thin. It'll polish things up a little bit, and it will affect the reading. The reading will be a little higher. If there was an issue with a stuck valve, right, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't have any compression. And now we can check for spark. Let me blow the plug. I just wanted to clean off whatever was on it. And I'm just going to quickly check for spark. But the gap looks good. I'm looking inside here. I don't see any rust or anything. And I'm just going to look for a quick spark. Yeah, we got spark. All right. So now I can put this back together again, right? I'm going to thread this back in. Remember, I got the bail pulled back. I have I like to use Velcro. Just easier. We don't know what the oil is like. All right, we want to check the oil. Let's see. We'll tighten up the plug. Now, if you put a new plug in, the oil looks clean. Looks very clean. Let me show you. But it's not black. A little bright where I am. It's not black, so we're going to run it with this oil in it. If there's any gook in the engine, it's laying on the bottom. And when we run it to sort of re-break it in again, you know, make sure she's going. Let me make sure this is clean. If you have a new plug going in, there's a gasket on this plug, and you're going to need to seat it. This one's a used plug that I cleaned, so I don't have to do that. It'll tighten up right away. But you're going to feel like it's stripping. And actually, this one needed to be tweaked a little bit. Just go slow. Yeah, this one needed to be tightened a little bit. Go slow. It's going to feel like it's stripping. It's not. Put the plug back on. Let's put the carburetor on. To put the carburetor on, we just have to reverse the whole sequence. So we're going to grab our rod. Right? Z bend. And then just kind of comes across the top. And it sort of slides into the bracket. Give it a push. I'm going to take our previously cleaned backing plate, and it only goes on one way. Remember, that's for your crankcase vent, and I blew that out as well. Line it up, make sure it's engaged well, And remember, right, we've got machine threads, right? These are the fine threads, and they go into metal. So I'm just gonna loosely start them and shove them in there. You know, just to get everything lined up. And I don't want to pinch on it. And then we have the silver ones. And those are our plastic threads. They're like wood threads. Right, and that goes into the plastic of the carburetor. Let's just get those started. All right, now we can tighten it. And just hand tight, no power tools. Very good. Check our throttle. Looks good. Grab our gas tank. Slide it on. And we put a little lubricant on that. I blew this out. And I'm going to reach underneath. And just slide over the clamp. Lift up. And put it into the bayonet mount. And let me give you a shot of that before I push it down. I want you to see from this side. Pop it down, and then we're going to go over what I wanted to show you on the top. All right, last look. Okay, over here, looks good. Here's the bayonet style mount. I'll show you from the other side too. See how it fits into these slots? All right, and we'll just push it down all the way. And then we can put our top on. All right, so here it is. So we've cleaned it out well. I have the brightness up so you can see inside the black plastic. I'm just going to put a little oil and then a little bit on these poles, right, that's spread out. See, they are a little dirty still. And then there's a spot where that spring is right here. Drew some oil in there. Another good thing to use would be a bit of chain wax or chain lube and pull it. I'm going to pull it a whole bunch of times, fellas. All right, turn it over and then wipe up the excess. Okay, which there really isn't much. I didn't use a lot. I don't use a lot. It's just enough because it gets sticky and just gross. And even though we wash it, I didn't use any super clean or anything on this machine. I didn't need to, just the pressure. And then we can lay it down. And we'll put our screws back. Don't force it. If you want, it's not a bad idea. All right, put a little no-seize on these, okay? Because they'll get stuck. All right. I'm just gonna, you can put a little oil as well. They can get stuck. So it's not super important, but you know, if you want to take care of this machine and clean it out, remember it's oil and air cooled. So the air is what really cools it. But the oil is also not just a lubricant, it's a transfer medium, and that's all it has. And because these 3 bolts, just get them all started, then tighten them up. You only have 3 bolts, and you can get it everything and get in here and clean everything out every year. Oh my, I mean, that's one of the things I like about this. This is like the Honda in that sense. And this is, again, one of the things that I like about this engine configuration, because on a flathead, it's a nightmare. There's a lot of stuff to take off, and it needs to come off at some point periodically, every few years. I don't know, maybe 4 years. It depends. It depends what goes wrong with the engine. If enough goes wrong with the engine, like when I get them, I got to take everything apart. All right, we're going to put some fuel in it. I'm going to put a little bit of lubricant on the cable, fellas. A lot of times I just pop the cable off and I put lubricant in. And I think the last thing is put some oil on these wheels, especially the front wheels, because for some reason or other, particularly the front, the wheels will get stuck on the shaft. There's a bushing in here that's like, it's like a knurled serration that's pressed into the plastic. That will get jammed on the shaft, and you're done, right? You're done. So to prevent that from happening, lubricate everything. The adjusters themselves don't really need it, but you can put a little bit down there. A chain wax is fine, or a chain lube, again, because the chain lube will jelly up and the wax will be like a grease. So I'm going to do that. I want to do these adjusters real quick, and because I'm going to sell it, we're going to put the air cleaner back. Let me show you that. It came out real clean. One of the things I like about these machines with the short cable sheath is when it's up, I just disconnect the handle, right? And then I usually do it with the top off, and I sort of, show you, I'll reach underneath, I grab a hold of it, I pull it out, I put some oil on it. This one had a lot of muck on it. Then I pull it through back the other way, right? All the way up, and I just put oil on it. I run it through a few times, I wipe it, and there was a lot of junk, right? This is what was on that cable, and I just use oil for these, but it's very simple. And I reach back underneath again, I give it a pull. All right, might want to give it another wipe. This one looks pretty good. And then I just kind of put oil on my fingers and I run it over the cable. If you want, you can use chain wax, cable lube, or a little bit of grease, but this is my quick service to it, and it needed it. Just like I said, a little bit of super clean, rinsed it out. Did it earlier, so it's dry. It's been out in the sun. Everything is clean. And I already popped some gas in it. We'll check the oil in a bit, right, after we run it. And see if it gets dirty. Probably will. Do a quickie oil change. Just dump it on the side. Everything is all lubricated. The wheels are all lubricated, ready to go. So let's bring it out for a test. All right, it's gonna smoke. Let's prime it up a bunch of times. Here we go. It's running good. Let's give it another start, just to make sure, without priming. Well, I guess she needs a bit of prime. She needs to run for a little bit. So although this one has advanced a little bit in damage and age, you don't have to let this happen. If you keep after it, like I just showed, and you don't leave it sit out, certainly on the ground, especially when you have a loaded deck, right? It's fouled with maybe wet grass. Maybe you have sprinklers or something, or you water a lot, or where we are, it only gets dry at one point in the year, usually around August-ish. The rest of the time it rains. It's going to rain all weekend. And that wet grass, you got to cut your grass when you can cut your grass, but that sticks up underneath. And because these decks are very thin, that's where the problem comes. So it will ruin your machine. The motor will probably outlast it. If you change the oil and take care of the engine, it'll be fine. But you saw little things like the screen popped out. There's just little quality issues overall, but I do like some of the features. I like the fact that you can you can pull the cable, like I showed, very easily, and you can get to almost the whole length of the cable, certainly the area that gets exposed to weather, and get it cleaned out and lubricated, and that'll keep the cable from breaking. I like the way the top comes off. I like the way the tank comes off. It's a lot less work to maintain one of these. I like the fact that the carburetor is easily serviced, right? And it can withstand a lot of the issues with the alcohol in the gas. I like a lot of that. I just got another one right now from a customer around the corner, and he's got the high wheel variant. I actually like the high wheel variant. It's a little bit easier to push because you got a little bit more of a taller wheel and a better fulcrum. Well, an issue is if you don't keep these lubricated, right? I've seen a lot of those where it just dies and you can't get the wheel off. You can get another machine and unbolt that plastic front, front and back. It's 6 1/2 dozen of the other I do a lot of machines that are 30 years plus, older Sears and what have you, and if they're the slightest bit maintained, they generally can come back, and I bring them back, and anybody that's seen the rest of my channel knows I enjoy that. They're more survivable. These won't make it that long, even if you take really good care of it. It's unlikely, because it'll crack sooner or later. That's a stress crack, and the rust doesn't help. It will happen. Can it be fixed? Yeah, you can weld that section. You're going to have to take off the nose, but if it was cracked on this deck with all that rust underneath, I'd have to throw it out. Hopefully this was helpful. I will see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching this episode of Archer's Garage. And hit the like and subscribe if you guys haven't. And, leave a comment, all right? Let's build the channel up together. I'll see you on the next one.